So, as you said, my name is Lenny Goodings, and I'm joined by Maya Thomas and by Nayo. So, what we're going to do, what we are going to discuss here is professional disruption. I got Maya and Nayo to sit just before we came out and said, what is the sort of Venn diagram of the kind of two things, of the things that you both do in your work? And we came up with this, well, it was Nayo, professional disruption. So one of them does it with, they both work on inclusion and diversity, some in the government, some in arts, but anyway, that definitely is our and I'd like to think of myself as a professional disruptor too, as a publisher. So I'm going to start with Maya. I'm going to introduce each of my guests, and then they're going to tell us a little bit about their work, and then I'm going to ask a few questions at the end. So Maya Thomas is an award-winning equality, diversity, and inclusion, EDI, consultant, anti-racism strategist, international speaker, founder of numerous community projects, and she has worked with over 300 UK schools, helping make safe spaces for students, decolonizing the curriculum, and working with teachers. She's worked with the Devon County Council as an EDI consultant on the race equality audit, worked for Jeremy Corbyn as head of economic security for the Peace and Justice Project. And she has masterminded various projects such as a food bank that's delivered over 30,000, that's amazing, 30,000 free food packages to people in need within 12 months. Yeah. That's right. I don't think that's really disruptive. I think that's professional, constructive. And her work has been featured on CNN, ITV, and BBC. So Maya, tell us about your work.
So I moved to Devon from London when I was about 8 years old, and that's when I really noticed that my race would impact my future. So when I first moved here in education, I wasn't allowed my natural hair out, which is an afro, and I wasn't allowed braids, which is a protective style of my hair. So every day I had to straighten my hair just to go into school. I had food thrown at me by children saying, feed the African and feed the slave, and the teachers never dealt with the racism. They wouldn't actually have a conversation about what was wrong. They would just give them a short punishment and move on the conversation. Often I've been followed home to where I live, and I've been told you can't afford to live here, so you must be here to cause disruption, as if I'm burglaring the area or something like that. In Exeter city centre as well, I've been physically assaulted multiple times by shop security guards who have accused me of stealing. And I think all these experiences actually led me to want to use my voice to speak out and challenge, as you can't change the narrative unless you do speak out and challenge. So I just want to speak about a few key pieces of work that I've done recently. So one of them, as was previously named, is the race audit at Devon County Council. So the aim of this audit was to deepen the leadership's group knowledge on equality, diversity, and inclusion. And the purpose was, using that knowledge, they could then address any structural racism within the organisation. So to do this audit, we did a literature review. So we were looking at public-facing documents, looking for cultural sensitivity and other aspects. Then we also did an audit speaking to councillors and other members of staff. So the key themes that came up within that audit were the denial of racism. So we spoke to staff who were white and also black and Asian, and the black and Asian staff said they experience racism on a daily basis, whereas the white staff and councillors said that it can't be happening in our organisation. I've not seen it, so it isn't happening. There was also a lot of white fragility. So an example of this would be fear of language. So often councillors or staff would get away with not actually speaking to members of the community from different and diverse backgrounds through fear of making mistakes. And they weren't challenged on this perspective. It was almost accepted that because someone is different, that's a valid reason to not speak to them, even though you're an elected member. So at the end of this audit, we came up with a list of recommendations. So that included hiring a diverse and skilled equality, diversity, and inclusion team so that all the protected characteristics could be addressed rather than it being one person. Also making sure that people can raise issues of racial grievances independent of their line managers. Currently, that wasn't possible. So other work that I do is in schools, in education. So I'm currently working with over 300 schools across the UK. Basically making sure that school is a safe place for all pupils to thrive and not just survive in the classroom. Out of all the schools that I've been into, around 9 out of 10 pupils from diverse backgrounds have said that they experience racism, and it's also a similar amount of pupils who may be white British, but they've said that they've witnessed it on the playground, and that's a statistic that we can't continue to live with. I also look at decolonising the curriculum, and that's basically looking at whose perspective is the information we're told coming from, challenging this, and ensuring that there's representation across what is taught and also who is viewed as an expert in a subject. So making sure that there are people with disabilities from different age ranges, different heritage, visible as leaders in subjects and not just only speaking about race. I've also got my food bank as well, as I mentioned, and that was also having a focus on diversity and inclusion. I once met a woman who, she was unable to eat pork. She told the food bank that, and they continuously gave her pork and said that she's lucky and her type of person is lucky to get help from this country. So there are people really struggling with basic needs. So my food bank looks at helping people who are in food poverty, but also looking at groups and accessibility and ensuring that people do have choice in what they do eat. And I just wanted to end by, I always end what I say about my work, leaving you with something that you can do in your everyday lives to be more inclusive. So I just wanted to touch on mindful communication and just the power of conversation, being here today and being involved in this discussion. That can help break down bias, and that can help us be a more inclusive society. Also think of what voices aren't represented at tables that you're able to sit at. How can we make them more diverse? How can we include them in the conversation? And also just please be proactive in everything that you do, making sure that you're here today. That is the first step, but continue to have those conversations, educate yourself, and hopefully one day we'll be in a much more inclusive society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nayo. Nayo is a performer who can switch from a DJ set to delivering jazz vocals and spoken word. She also has an amazing T-shirt.
You can't look at my breasts for this.
As well as performing, Nayo founded Booty Bass in 2000.
Booty bass.
Oh,
Booty.
bass.
Booty.
Yeah, I know booty.
And bass.
Bass,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
fine. Okay, I'm fine with booty. Bass was doing me in. In 2018, as a space for women and non-binary folk to come together, Nayo has performed virtually for Giles Peterson's We Are Out There Festival, Shangri-La, Lost Horizons, and Shambhala. Radio appearances have been regular on Kiss FM, BBC One Extra, BBC Introducing, and Trickstar Radio. She works as an inclusion and diversity consultant and facilitator specializing in working with arts organizations and festivals. She won a Royal Society Television Award for presenting Monumental, a documentary for BBC World, and recently has directed her own short for Netflix called Tegan.
Correct.
Tegan?
Yeah, Tegan. That's right.
Got that one. Okay, take it away. Thank you.
So yeah, hi everybody. Thank you for being here. I guess, yeah, we've got quite similar starts really in that I was born in London, in northwest London, and we moved to Prestine, which is in the middle of nowhere in Wales, when I was about 5. And that was the first time that I was ever made to be aware of race. So I'm mixed race. My mum's white, my dad's black. And in Harlesden in London, we'd been in a very multicultural place. So I didn't really know what race was until I went to school, and until I started being treated very differently. When my mum was there to when my mum wasn't there, I would be beaten up regularly in school. I was really good at Welsh, which the other kids did not like. So the teacher would often tell me I was cheating when the other kids were cheating off me, because she said that there was no way I was smart enough to speak Welsh better than them, or be better at maths, or be better, in fact, in any kind of education. And the first time I ever learned about slavery, I was the only black person in the class. And I just remember that moment of everyone staring at me and being so humiliated and confused because I didn't see myself as a victim. But I was bullied really badly for a really long time until we moved to Bristol. And that's when I was about, maybe 9 or 10. And then when I was in Bristol, I found a very different a very different layer of confusion, because I'd been made to feel so black in a very white space, and then I was in a city and made to feel very, well, I remember someone saying, "You're not a very good black person." And I was like, okay, I mean, it's true, sure, but like, what is blackness? And I think all of these questions that had been coming up in these different areas from a really young age, they really made me question identity. It made me question belonging. It made me question who's allowed to tell me where I'm allowed to belong and why. So that's been the heart of all of my work, really. And then I'm a creative, so I'm a musician, I'm a DJ, I'm a storyteller, and I just love people. I love hearing people's perspectives. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, like, communication is the biggest tool that we have in order to be able to understand each other and move forward. So yeah, when I started, when I went traveling around South America, I was so blessed to not speak any Spanish. Don't ask me why I went traveling to South America without being able to speak any Spanish. It's just what I thought was going to be a good idea. And it was great because it meant I could be quiet. All I did was sort of soak in another culture and the music and the vibe. And I came back to the UK and I was so excited about what could be coming next. So I started working for a big media company in journalism. And it was part of a diversity project because they wanted to get new voices into the space. And it became very clear that they had started a diversity project before they'd actually done any work internally to think about how you're going to be dealing with people who come from different backgrounds when you're in the space. So I got given a lot of very ignorant questions from people who are a lot higher above me in terms of power. And I didn't know how to challenge it because I wanted to stay working there. Eventually I left, and then I started working in the festival industry. And pretty much the exact same thing happened, because the festival industry is incredible, and the festival I was working for really played a lot of music that I loved, but it was appropriating another culture. And when I would start questioning this, it became a problem. So again, I left, and I just thought, you know what? Maybe I should just not be in these spaces if I'm going to be underneath people in this way, because I need to be able to challenge them. So I started working as an inclusion and diversity consultant for the arts and the festival industry, as someone who knows what it's like to be living the arts as a performer, as a DJ, but also be able to look at it and say, I understand the challenges that you guys have, but actually to do better, you need to start doing things like audits. You need to have a mission statement. You need to have an EDI plan and strategy. You need to be making sure that you're doing outreach so that the people whose music and culture you're benefiting from actually feel welcome in that space. Because if you're not doing that work, you shouldn't be profiting off that culture. So that's what I've been doing. And alongside that, I've been trying to make sure that I'm just upping representation wherever I can. So Booty Bass is my DJ collective, and it is for women and non-binary people, mostly from diverse backgrounds. And that's because when I started DJing, again, I realized it was being run by white men, straight white men, and it was just such a toxic environment to be in. You would have, sometimes I'd be DJing and have people staring at my hands while I was DJing, trying to help me DJ. And I was like, you're over there, bro. Like, no one booked you. Sit down. So I was like, no, I need my own crew. So I got my own crew together, and it has been an amazing experience, but it's also shown how much sexual harassment is also still very rife within the nighttime industry. So as part of my work trying to diversify that space, I started Halt Harassment, which is a campaign looking at how we as promoters, as DJs, as performers, as venue managers can all start to tackle sexual harassment, and also harassment from an intersectional point of view, because the harassment of a white woman is different to the harassment of a black woman. If you don't have an understanding of race and how that intersects, then you're not actually doing your job properly. So that has been a very difficult thing to get off the ground, because you're asking people to have multiple complex conversations. But, we keep trying. We keep disrupting.
Thank you so much. We have to clap for this now.
You don't have to clap.
We have to clap. Everything is fair. So one of the things I want to ask you, both professional disruptors, is I was thinking when I read your bios and listened to what you were doing, and I thought, that is, and now listening to how much it's come from personal experience to begin with, that's hard. And one of the things I was thinking is how do you keep your spirit up? How do you stay full of optimism? And the Emma Goldman, do you know, the American, anyway, she was Russian, American, British, Emma Goldman. She was a great anarchist writer of the 20th century. And she had this wonderful line, which I've always loved, which is, if I can't dance to it, it's not my revolution. And I've always loved that idea, yeah, we're going to work really hard, but we've got to have joy as well. And I wondered if you could, how do you find the joy in what you're doing?
I think for me, especially working in education, working with young children that have already been through so much they shouldn't have to go through at that age, you just see the difference that it makes in people's daily lives just by you taking that extra time to have these difficult conversations, to keep trying to change the narrative. And I think for me as well, I was around a lot of people who went through these experiences, but they hadn't found their voice yet. And as soon as you've found yours, all I wanted to do is elevate others. So it brings me joy to be able to tell other people's stories when they're unable to and make tangible change. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the joy of someone saying to you, yeah, you said the thing that I felt too afraid to say, or the thing that I didn't know how to put into words. And also just to be able to sort of see that when you take up space, you pave the way for someone else to come and take up that space with you. One of the things that I loved about when I started DJing was that because I was there, all the women would come to the front. And then as soon as the guy would get back on the decks, they would all disappear again. And that made me go, yeah, actually we do need to be here. And I need them to know that I can see them. They're seen, they're protected, they're safe, we're all in this boat together. And I think sometimes when you're a voice that is able to speak, it gives others the power to speak as well.
Mm-hmm. And how do you keep against the toughness of it though? How do you keep your own spirit?
Ooh, I buy a lot of candles. I'm not going to lie. I've got a bit of a candle obsession. TK Maxx is doing well off me with the candles. Yeah, candles and dancing. And sometimes, dancing with the candles on.
I think earlier as well, we were discussing the power of actually saying no to certain jobs or people trying to decide the way that we teach or the way that we get our message across. We were saying it's actually powerful now to be able to say, no, I won't do it like that. If you want me to do this, I'll do it in this way because I know this is what will get results. I won't be a token that will come in and do a talk for 10 minutes that will be forgotten about in a large company. I want to have a long-term strategy. I want to do an audit to find out what's going on, and that's how it has to be. And also the power of knowing when you just need to take a break and have some time out. It's quite difficult, especially as an EDI consultant. It's always around you, like the conversation is always going, and as much as I say it's important to keep it going, sometimes you need to know when to step back and take some time for yourself, like mentally as well, because it's reliving that trauma over and over again.
And so you're both doing work in this part of the country, and how are you finding it here, especially outside of the bigger cities or, in the Southwest? How are you finding that?
I mean, I'm doing it mostly in Bristol. I'm not really doing it in Exeter per se.
No,
I've
I
worked
realise,
for a couple of organisations. I think the way that things have started going recently is that everyone was very excited about it around BLM. Everyone wanted to sort of do action first. They wanted to do a lot of action without doing actually the self-reflection they had to do to be able to make sure that the fragility wasn't there, the defensiveness wasn't there. And now that there's been a lot of book reading and people have done a few good discussions, they've kind of gone, I think it's probably all right now. And I'm starting to see the gas come off the pedal a little bit. So that's a bit frustrating. But at the same time, there are still a lot of organizations which are now, which we were sort of talking about before, rather than just saying, oh, come and do a talk, they're going, no, actually, we see that we need a 5-year plan and that there's a longer term commitment. And that's really exciting to see.
Yeah, there's definitely been a shift in commitment and a shift in the conversation. A lot of the time previously it was wholly negative, and an organisation might feel that they're being attacked because you're raising a concern or raising an issue, whereas now they understand that that's just part of the journey.
It does give you a bit of hope that people can change, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think what I'm finding really hopeful is that people know they're going to make mistakes now. That's the best thing. It's not that people need to be perfect. It's that they know you're going to make some mistakes, you're going to be embarrassed, and we're going to move forward. And that's okay, because that's part of the journey. That's part of the learning.
Yeah, and we say like part of what we do is to facilitate that safe space to allow people to make the mistakes so that the change can happen. Yeah. And we know that we're not perfect and we'll make mistakes in what we say sometimes too, and that's okay.
And do you see yourself, I mean, in this context of the Herstory, you know, we're so much celebrating professional disruption, aren't we? But also a sort of history of protest, you know, and we've heard it, you know, a lot of the poets who've gone into the community and drawn stories from grandmothers and from chain makers, women who started up unions and things. Do you see yourself in that kind of context? Do you feel part of that movement? You obviously do, but I mean, does it give you strength to know that you're standing on someone else's shoulders?
I think I would say it does, but also I acknowledge that the movement and the times that we're in are completely different to before. So now there is a lot of education. Like for me, to solve a lot of these issues, it does stem with education. And it does need to be led by community activists as well as being top down, but you know, as a community activist, you can actually make a difference. So I would say that I do feel part of a wider movement, but I'm very aware of the changes in the movement and that I need to make changes to get my message across because of the way that society is nowadays. Yeah,
definitely. And I think I do. I think, exactly as you say, I think like where we are now, it feels, what I'm enjoying about right now is that people understand words like intersectionality and that has been brought to the forefront and that we're not just talking about one type of feminism, we're talking about a feminism that is inclusive of all women, and that feels good to me. I think it's always I never really describe myself as an activist because I feel like there's lots of different ways of being an activist, but there are people who are on the ground all day, every day, and you know, I DJ, you know, and there is a form of activism, and going into the spaces that I do and doing the talks that I do, like it is activism, but actually there's so many different layers, and I feel like what's really exciting is that I can see so many different people in different lanes, and we're all kind of trying to push forward together. And I think that spread feels like it's very new. But yeah, I do. I feel like there's a lot of great positive things that have come behind us that's made me proud to call myself a feminist from the age of 5. You know, and that's probably why I do the work that I do.
Yeah, I must say I agree with you. I think that, you know, what we see is change on so many different layers, isn't it? And sometimes people get very hung up on there's got to be a certain kind of change, and, you know, celebrity change is not okay. You know, you want grassroots only, but it's everything, isn't it? You can't, it doesn't change. And also it doesn't go in a linear fashion. No. That's the other thing. Yeah. It's very pendulum and you know, finds its way. But both of you do, you know, you are obviously activists or professional disruptors in your personal life, but you do it as a business. I mean, you make money. Sorry, I don't mean you make money. Good, you make money. Sorry, I don't mean you're exploiting it. What I mean is...
exploiting the fear.
Yeah, go for it. What I mean is you're professional. But you're in communities that, you know, doors are opening more than they used to, that's for sure. But that you still must have to balance idealism and pragmatism. How do you manage that?
I think for me, firstly, I don't think a lot of what I'm asking for and what we're campaigning for is idealistic at all. It's basic rights in a lot of the circumstances across all the protected characteristics. But I'd say I balance. Sometimes, obviously, my vision might not be what's going to happen straight away, but I'm very aware that it's a journey, and I'm also really focused on like measurable goals. So whenever I'm doing something with an organization, it's not an optimistic view of ideally we just want it to look like this. There's like facts, figure, and data that would be needed to back up the change so that they've got targets to work for with time scales as well. So it is very realistic.
I would agree. Like I don't think it's optimistic or idealistic. I think it's just, you know, we shouldn't even really be in the space where we are currently. You know, these are things that should have been done a long time ago. I think the way that I've been running things as well is, again, it's the thing of like, you need to have the data, you need to have these goals. You can't just go, oh yeah, hopefully at some point it'll be better. Like, how is it going to be better? How are we going to get there? So I think having that strategy is always really important. But also a lot of the way that I sort of facilitate with people is going, this is as much about you, how much work you're personally going to be putting in. It's not about me coming in and telling you all the answers. You need to go and think about why you've never had to think about this, why you've got to the point you have now, like what things make you feel uncomfortable, why. Like I've got an anti-racism scale, which I show people, and it's fascinating because people really think they're doing all the work and they look at the scale and they go, I don't think I'm that far along. And I'm like, neither do I, babes. That's why I'm here. Now, it's all right. Let's just see how we can start moving up, shall we? So I think it's, but that's how I balance it out, is going, all right, this is what I can show you, but actually, like, I can't do the work for you. You need to do the work for yourself, and you need to know that this is going to be work that you have to continually keep doing, the same way I have to continually keep educating myself about basic human rights, you know? It's like, I also need to be doing this work, and I love it. So you need to do it, and you feel uncomfortable with it. So it's a journey.
But see, we never used to even talk about that kind of, you need to do the work, And now we at least have. I know we're not there yet, but at least now we have a conversation that people understand. That actually you can't just do a knee-jerk reaction. You've got to read. You've got to think. You've got to listen. Whatever. To me, this is progress from the 1970s. I'm going to tell you. So I'm going to finish. My last question is: so you're giving a lot in your daily life and in your work, and what are you getting? Money. aside from money. Aside from a wage, what are you getting back?
I'm getting a feeling that I'm going to leave the world a more positive place than when I came into it. And I think that's the thing that keeps me going. Whenever I do a training which exhausts me to the point of tears, I think you're doing something right. And actually, that's as long as I'm making small positive changes, it doesn't matter if I don't see, what's that? It's that metaphor, that guy who like plants the tree even though he'll never feel the shade. It's very, very dramatic, but that's how I see it. I'm doing something good. I'm doing something that makes me feel like I go to bed at night and I'm proud of myself. But that I also say sometimes, if it's been a particularly exhausting one, let's light a candle. Let's take tomorrow off.
Good.
I think it's just the small things, like we were saying earlier, someone saying you've given me the power to challenge or to speak about something or to address something that I've been suppressing within me for such a long time. And I think even if it's a small change, that it's making a difference to someone somewhere. And even if it's one person out of 100, that one person will go on and speak to a couple more people, and that will lead to a couple more people. So that it is making a difference, but we're very aware that it is a long journey. So every day we might not feel we get joy out of it, and we definitely don't. We've spoke about how draining it is some days, but as a collective, it is really positive.
That I published Maya Angelou at Virago, and she did have that expression that you'll try and leave the world different from the one you came into. And I always thought, yeah, it's good. I think that's us. And aren't you amazing? I am really thrilled. That was a really fascinating conversation.
Thank you
Don't
so
you
much.
agree?
Thank you.